Let's start with this or that.
We're going backwards. I like it.
Liam or Noel?
I don't know. I didn't like Liam when he was younger, but I like him now. He's different. Noel, great.
Would you like to talk about another 5-letter word beginning with O? Because I've got one.
What a link. What a fucking link.
I'd like us to talk a little bit more about what is the world today, what we do, and how our proposition, which is called Orbit, the 5-letter word that I was referring to there, how it has been built, iterated on, adapted, and ultimately how it works in practice for both our teams who are delivering for our clients and also the end benefit that I think clients should hopefully, after however long working with us under the sort of Orbit approach and proposition, should be able to turn around and tell us what we've achieved and why, which hopefully would be massively linked to Orbit. So, do you want to give a little bit of a backstory in terms of the inner workings of the proposition in terms of its history? So this isn't a proposition that we've just launched today. This has been, we've been talking about it with prospective clients and rolling it out for clients for some years. So where did all of this sort of start in your head? What sort of things were you observing and when you were reflecting back on, I'm going to call it like a traditional digital agency and the services and the disciplines that you'd expect to have heard from them, say, in the last 5 years, everything from organic search, so SEO, through to paid media, and very sort of siloed like that. What were your reflections when you were looking at the world, looking at our proposition and thinking something needs adapting?
Well, I mean, it goes back quite a long way, to be honest. My mindset when we set up, which is 10 years ago, which is a long time ago, is always been focused around attention, where people are spending the time. Mm-hmm. So that's always been rattling around when it comes to what we're delivering, what we're doing to get clients the attention, where do they need to be to leverage that. I think it started with SEO, obviously my background, and then the sheer quantity of considerations that people within SEO have had to layer on. It's not just technical, it's not just content, it's 50 million things that you have to now consider, which has grown and grown and grown. And now in the last 18 months, we've also got the places in which that needs to be transferred across to. So the volume and expectation of things and mechanics and cogs that have to be part of a effective strategy now is exponential compared to 10 years ago. But like you said, about 2 years ago, we started really writing down what that means and looking at what that means, how we deliver that in a cohesive way. Also, how do we report on that in a cohesive way, and what that looks like, which is where we arrived, where we are today with Orbit, which is our approach to user-centered search. It's platform agnostic. It's focused on real marketing, and it's focused on the users that you're trying to convince and the users that you're trying to build reputation with and influence with. And that's the whole approach.
You said something there about like this is like real marketing. What's underlying that for you to say real marketing? What have you seen? Where have you been before? Obviously, your background being SEO as well. what made you say, like, our proposition, and today you use the words real marketing? What have you seen that isn't? What sorts of things that today just doesn't look anything like anymore?
I think the best example in the context of digital agencies that certainly offer SEO is if you split the last 10 years into two halves and you look at the first 5 years and you take in isolation, because there's many examples, but the best one and the most contextually relevant one is probably digital PR.
Yeah.
Or as it was in agency land, like link building.
Yeah.
So historically, link building, dirty word, paying for links, influencing rankings.
Yeah.
Whereas the agencies that didn't adhere to that and started thinking about it differently and doing things properly and building brand reputation and building mentions, citations, visibility, influence through digital PR were the ones that were doing it right. And then what happened was everybody cottoned on to the fact that link building was now called digital PR. Whereas now the KPIs of I want 250 links have been replaced with we need to be doing digital PR, we need mentions, we need citations, we need coverage, we need podcasts, we need video, we need through digital PR as a service and as a platform. And that's kind of what I'm alluding to.
Yeah.
And that happens and has happened across all services. Digital PR is just an example. And again, contextually relevant one because it influences presence in generative engines like ChatGPT, like Perplexity. So it feels like the best example.
Yeah. Do you, just using the digital PR example, have you seen a bit of a seismic shift then in how, not necessarily we, but how the industry defines it?
I'm seeing a seismic shift in the opinion and the demand for SEO in general. The last 6 months has been ridiculous in terms of the shake-up, the tech, the forecast for where it's heading in terms of AI mode, AI overviews, ChatGPT, all part of that conversation, GEO.
Yeah.
It means that SEOs are almost perfectly positioned to now be the people that know how to pull the right levers for brands to get in front of it and capitalize on that shift in user behavior. Like 3 years ago, no one opened ChatGPT to answer their question. They opened Google. Just fast forward to today. I don't know how much of a starting point Google is anymore.
Yeah. You said something interesting there, thinking about the profile of an SEO in today's world. Do you think that has shifted, or do you think ultimately what it is the best SEOs would be a bringing together of several disciplines? So in other words, I'm going to go back to the sort of very static old way of thinking of almost like sub-disciplines of tech content. I'm talking on-site content there. And then digital PR. Is an SEO of today to be, in your opinion, the most effective they can be? Is their profile as holistic across all of that, plus more probably? But is that the shape of a good profile of an SEO now, and not that siloed discipline?
Yeah, I think the requirement for SEO is just, like I say, got hugely more vast. And I think in another 2-3 years, you're going to be seeing SEO in its current form shift to, I don't know, influence engineer as a job title, brand influence engineer for PR, information engineer for content. Like it's going to have to be more holistic, and it's going to have to cover or reflect user behaviour in the current market.
Do you think SEO, so if you go back to the start of your career or the early years of your career, and then if you compared yourself as being inherently in SEO now, obviously with everything else that you do, but just honing in on SEO now, would you be thinking differently as an SEO now? Are you almost forced to think differently? And what I mean is, you specifically use the word like brand in one of those, let's say, job titles that you just used there. Is that something that brand, using that as a forethought, really, as a central point for thinking now from a marketing and an effectiveness perspective, but from an organic point of view and brand growth, is that something that as an SEO in your earlier years you were as honed in on, or would be expected to be as honed in on as maybe an SEO of today, thinking like brand and almost, like I said, that holistic sort of approach to organic?
I think brand and organic have always had a tricky relationship, certainly from a client perspective, because as an SEO, if you were going in and trying to hinge on brand and take credit for brand, sometimes it was viewed as like, well, we've got the brand anyway, which is a naive view. And I think the realization that you can influence brand through SEO strategy is now becoming a common conversation. And God, I remember pitching a citation only link building approach, no links, for a global client back in, I don't know, 2012,
right,
something like that.
Yeah.
And this was, I'm talking like a huge global company spending significant tens of thousands on SEO a month, and it worked, and that was in 2012.
So part of that problem back in 2012, you mentioned almost like a disconnect, if that's the right word, between like organic and brand in those years and previously. What do you think has got us to arrive at the point now where maybe there's that disconnect is less and less so? Like, where agency side, so we sort of live and breathe it, and we've got that, we're afforded the benefit of being across different sectors, seeing how, you know, all these sorts of changes and things are impacting different sectors at different times. But brand side, you're not afforded that. So is the disconnect that you talked about that previously might have been in play between organic and brand from a client or a brand side marketer, has that also improved in their own knowledge and their own experience, so that they aren't almost removing brand as a thing that they think SEO agencies would hide behind, and therefore isn't reflective of what is holistic organic growth? Have they got better? Have they got better understanding? And or have agencies just done a better job of pulling them away from that mindset, do you think?
I think information is more readily available. I think there's more information about everything available and being talked about and being discussed, and the discoverability of that information is a lot higher. I think the rise of SEO across, or the rise of presence across platforms has commoditized like attention, almost, where you need to find it, how you need to be present on multiple platforms. And then what's happened is the rise in platform costs for media has caused brands to then think, fuck, it's getting expensive to just capture bottom of funnel people. We need to look elsewhere. And it's a conversation that's been driven by CFOs as well. They're looking at media spends increasing, platform costs increasing, and CFOs are going, you need to fucking find a different way of getting sales here. And then all of a sudden, agencies that have been talking about it for the last 10 years and saying you can't just solely rely on this, and now, right? So there's a lot of moving parts to it.
The platform cost thing's an interesting one. What do you imagine, just as a forecast, what do you forecast is going to happen there? Because we've talked for the last, how long? 2 years, 18 months, 2 years, maybe even longer, coming out of the back of probably COVID and the recovery, and then into today, climbing and climbing and climbing these platforms. Do you think in response to this that we're talking about, which is almost like flipped it round from performance first and almost like, what do they call it? Like almost renting your audience. You don't actually own that audience because you're basically paying these platforms. Do you think it'll flip the other way at some point? In your opinion, we say with no guarantees, do you imagine these platform costs will start to come down as in a response to what we're almost seeing now, which is platform costs have gone up?
There are probably 5 key platforms that are going to dictate that, in that ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini or AI mode. Those companies and those platforms that are going to carry the largest amount of share when it comes to those generative engines that will monetize and put ads in there at some point are going to control the media cost influence elsewhere, I think, because if they have volume and then they price lower than the other platforms are going to want to compete.
Yeah.
Which will likely drive platform costs back down. Whereas I think they've been make hay while the sun shines.
Well, yeah.
They've had the sheer volume to charge whatever they really want. And don't get me wrong, like, yes, the platform costs have gone up, but I still think the cost to acquire a customer through Facebook, through Google, through all these big platforms has been wildly underpriced for ages.
Yeah.
And people have just got used to it.
Yeah.
The cost of entry, the cost of acquiring a customer has become so low on those platforms, those media platforms, that it's just become like a expectation.
Yeah. Almost like lost sight of its reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. And then sort of bringing it back to our proposition then and Orbit. In your description of Orbit and how you think it is best applied today, and thinking about things like media costs that we've talked about have risen, etc., how do you see the benefit? How should a potential client see the benefit of an Orbit approach to their brand? What do you hope are their most meaningful and attainable outcomes that we do report on for our clients, almost irregardless of the sector? I know it changes sector by sector, but an effective Orbit program in place.
I think it's palpable. Like there's a tricky moment where when you're discussing or you're setting strategy using Orbit, it sometimes looks on the face of it like it's just throwing as much at it as possible and seeing what sticks, but it's not. It's designed to place brands in the most relevant places in front of the most relevant audience with the intention of either imprinting on their audience so that when the mental availability is there, they think of them and come back, or the performance side of it is there to convert the people that you've already pushed through that funnel or that process. If I think about the mechanics of a full-on Orbit campaign, there's so much going on.
Yeah.
There's so much going on, but I think what people fail to understand is where brands are operating and have the budget availability, that's the necessity. They need to have those moving parts, they need to have that availability, they need to have the influence, they need to have the longevity, and it's constant. But it's designed effectively.
Yeah, I wanted to use that word. For any skeptics at that early stage, like you said, when we're almost forming that strategy with, so Orbit as a framework is tons and tons of different exercises, analyses, processes that form this Orbit approach, which obviously, as we said, sort of user-centered search mindset. So we, as many people have, ripped up the linear funnel, etc. But any of those skeptics that might be a new client that we're getting sort of embedded with, and that orbit approach in the strategic definition stage is up and running. Would you sort of, is that where we need to be talking, and we do talk to our clients or prospective clients about holistic effectiveness of marketing?
Yeah, I think the interplay between channels and platforms is a must. I think that's got to be part of your strategy now, because that's how users use the internet, use apps. But with that, the capability, because of advancements in AI, of processing data, getting data, making decisions, preempting, pre-testing, scaling creative, scaling everything, it's ultimately become less expensive, and efficiencies elsewhere in terms of workload, tasks, means that we can deliver that across multiple platforms.
Read a really interesting case study on Allbirds this morning, who, for anyone who hasn't followed their story, came out with a bang, absolutely flopped, and now they're slowly coming back up, sort of head above the parapet. And some of the strategic decisions they've made, I think, are absolute, I would say genius, but I'm saying genius relative to where they were, because it's very reactive. So I think it might be a new CEO, might not be a new CEO, has come in and fully gone back to where did we start in terms of products.
First principles.
Yeah. Embedded the brand back into those principles and values, and sort of cemented them back in. Well and truly pulled back on product category scale as well. And some of the things you were saying there are just completely reflected in them. So there was in this case study, so there's a comment about how they've scaled creative testing. Now it was only one article, it didn't specifically point to AI to be able to realise that, but I'm certain the fact that this is a very hot off the press case study that I was reading this morning, and the way that they followed that journey, and this sort of rebound, and as I said, some quite sensible, on the face of it, strategic decisions. One of the things that they pinned a lot of the biggest shifts is the ability to scale that creative testing. Now, if I'm reading that today and it was a very here and now, this is the curve that they're coming, hopefully bouncing back on, it must be AI that has at least empowered a lot of that.
It's enabled it.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, like, that scaling it fine, but the area where we're spending a lot of time and paying a lot of attention is pre-testing. We pre-test content, we pre-optimize content so that we know how it's going to perform before it goes out. We're doing the same with creative. We're looking at creative, we're making it as effective as we can using the data points that we've got before it even goes live. Persona testing, pre-campaign testing. So we're basically, I mean, we've got a tool in the stack at the moment, to give you an example, which is only capable and possible because of AI. It's got 500,000 data points in it. It allows you to build an audience for who you're targeting based on what outcome you're looking for. Digital PR campaign. What would this concept do? Would this resonate with this audience? What could I do better? That's before we even shown it to the client, got it out the door. That capability didn't exist 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It just didn't.
Yeah.
So when your agencies are approaching you and going, right, we're going to do this, we're going to put you here, 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 here. It's going to, so these are your platforms. This is the strategy. But it's going to cost more.
Yeah.
Take what they're saying to you and think, do you know what, that sounds like it's going to be fucking really effective, and they're doing a lot of due diligence, and they're doing a lot of groundwork before they've even got anything out the door.
Yeah.
That's AI enabled, all of it.
Yeah.
And that's the key point of difference that I think is going to become prevalent.
Yeah. So
what I hope doesn't happen is, I hope brands don't look at it and think I'm getting fleeced here, or they're trying to pull wool over his eyes, in the same way where SEO got the snake oil reputation.
Yeah, it's very black hat and behind closed doors.
Also, two brands, just going back to your point about Allbirds, New Balance, Sonos,
yeah,
two brands to really look at the stories on. New Balance in particular.
Yeah.
Sonos has just brought in a new CEO. Directionally, very similar to Allbirds.
Yeah, the Allbirds one's it's amazing it's an amazing proof of concept of that just going absolutely wild. I mean, they've closed, this might be wrong, 50% of the stores as well. So they are also going back to basics in terms of pinning a lot on the online journey. Now, yes, there's retail as well, but it'd be interesting to see how they bring that together and then sticking to core brand principles and all that. It just sounds exactly
what New Balance did.
Yeah.
New Balance, CMO, I think it was CMO, came in, flipped the strategy completely on its head, and it did absolutely nothing for about 18 months. And then all of a sudden...
Yeah. I mean, that again, like, hold your horses. It's a great example.
Christ, having the staying power for 18 months
Yeah.
when it's underperforming is a very, not risky, but very trepidatious
Yeah.
period of time.
Scrutiny is obviously scaled and I don't mean directly proportionate, but proportionate to scale of brand. And you're talking New Balance there, you're talking Allbirds. These are big, big brands. So to cling on as such, to trust the process for 18 months, as I said, it scales, scrutiny scales, but my God, the scrutiny in that period must have been really tough. Really tough, but
just imagine the gratification. Though.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now look at New Balance. Jesus.
Yeah. So obviously, Orbit as a proposition, it's probably worth mentioning if anyone's listening to this and going on our website, an Orbit reference is coming.
Stealth mode.
Yeah. But you mentioned there about how a few of our proprietary tools that form as part of our day-to-day backdrop to this Orbit user-centered search approach. Some of those tools, a lot of those tools, in fact, all of them are either AI enabled or AI augmented. You mentioned about I just want to go into timings here. You mentioned about our content, our copywriting copy tool. So pre-testing, sandbox environment, basically refine and improve and optimize before you've even gone live. How long ago did we launch that tool? Because I think what's a really interesting timings thought here is, and I've posted about it this week on LinkedIn, that we were ahead of what is search today that everyone's talking about and brands are flapping towards, like, shit, we haven't been geared up for this. I didn't tell a fib this week on LinkedIn by saying we were doing this years ago, and our first tool that I think comes to mind for me is that one.
Goose was about 5 years ago, I think.
That's probably about right, because I've been here 6 years, and I was certainly referencing it in prospective client conversations at least 4 to 5 years ago. So again, there are agencies out there, and we are one of them, that has not only been thinking this way, but putting things in place and behaving. What sorts of things could a client listening to this, who may be speaking to new agencies or whatever, what sort of questions would you be expecting or hoping a client around all of this would be asking us to sort of either think about or show or prove? What sorts of questions do you think clients may come to agencies with now or should be thinking about? Or if you were a client approaching an agency, what do you want to know today?
I think if you're an established brand, you've got to understand your audience, and you've got to figure out where they're hanging out, and you've got to look at the market, and you've got to put yourself in the right places. That's the key. It's not a scattergun approach. It's not a one size fits all. It's not a I need to be on every single platform. to make this work. It's about mapping your position within each point of a user journey against the levers that you've then got to pull. So looking at user behavior at a macro level, and then looking at the strategy at a micro level, and then aligning your stack and your output with that is the simplest way that I can try and describe it. It's very complex to get to the point where you've got the confidence and the roadmap and the strategy lined out. But it can be wildly effective. And one thing I will say, which I've said before, is SEOs and SEO agencies are perfectly positioned for the new era of user behavior when it comes to building audience and building influence within a sector. And I think influence is the point of importance there, because you can no longer enter a sector or be in a sector, spend fuckloads of money and be comfortable with the returns that you get just because you're playing a volume game, because the cost of entry is so low. You've got to build influence. Doesn't matter necessarily what the audience size is, but build influence to the point where you confidently can sell your product or service to that cohort of people. That's what influence is within a sector. And if you can scale it, great.
Yeah.
But you can't. The approach of, right, is £1 million a month. We want 2 million back. What can you do with it? Let's put it in performance. What happens when you turn that performance off?
Yeah. If your sales dry up, what have you got?
And that's a tough conversation at that scale, because how do you then transition that off? But one thing, again, I've said this a couple of times here, the services that good agencies are delivering in that space, and there are a lot of good agencies that are delivering it. It's not just us, we're not just ring fencing it to us. What they will charge is still wildly underpriced for what they're going to be able to deliver over the long term. And it's not a matter of how or if or when, it's do or die almost, because we're at the very start of what is going to be an exponential curve over the next 24, 36 months. Foundational SEO that's been built over the last 5 months is a great jumping off point to capitalise on that exponential curve.
Yeah. Interestingly, you said over the long term there, in terms of the value that agencies will deliver to clients. Is that also a thing that needs reiterating over the long term?
So I would want to build, if I were a client, I'd want to build a partnership that has longevity, that sees the value in an agency and finds the agency that is keeping themselves out in front, and then taking through the long term with that. I think that's how you get your best results. I think agency hopping, I'm hoping, will become less frequent, just based on the fact that the speed in which the market is moving now will not allow for it to happen quite as much. Similarly with the pitch process, I'm hoping that the pitch process is going to become less vigorous and less drawn out, because the speed in which the market moves means the longer that you draw it out, the more opportunities you're missing. So I hope that those two come into focus and come into play.
Yeah. A question going back a couple of steps that you were mentioning there, from like an orbit perspective, you mentioned, that when you gave your sort of definition, you said it's complex. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
Is there more and more scope nowadays for agencies to be appointed on a consultative basis because of the depth of that?
Yep. So alongside the orbit proposition development and the service delivery for existing and new clients, and the BAU, the ongoing strategy, we've also built a new growth consultancy service, which is basically designed to do that, and a lot of that is around workshopping, education, making sure that in-house teams are on the same page and at the same level, so that whoever's deploying the strategy, whether that be us or whether that be internally or whether that be another agency, the alignment on KPIs, the alignment on delivery, the alignment on the strategy is all on the same page, and that's important as well.
How do you see that? Do you see that as being I'm going to use in inverted commas, a tough sell from a brand side? So in other words, we've identified that we think that's the best thing to prescribe to X brand because of whatever their situation is. How do you imagine that's going to be received?
Depends on the level of knowledge. I think an in-house team or an in-house or a CMO or someone that's in the position of thinking about it right now, unless they've got a really good foundation of knowledge around what we're talking about, I imagine that it's probably a little bit overwhelming for quite a few people, quite a number of people. And all I would say is there's a lot of people and a lot of unknowns, so don't feel like asking questions or challenging is not the right move. Which is a tough position to put yourself in, I suppose.
Yeah, sometimes it is, but also it's also giving a lot of credit to what we're all trying to not swim against, but get the best out of and be as effective with a pace of change which is just phenomenal. So I don't think, I agree with you. I don't think it's a time to save face, is it? And pride and things like that, because we are in a great position being in an agency to be across, as I said, having that versatility across such diverse challenges, sector by sector by sector, that the ones that we're in, including our own sector, to be able to hopefully, be the speediest executors and strategists against that change.
Courage, I think, is a key word for all brands right now. I think having the courage to do these things confidently is something that doesn't need to be underestimated.
Yeah. Do you think you've seen enough courage from brands recently? Do you think?
It's tough because the economic influence and the climate has been tricky, and a lot of turbulence in a lot of different markets is meaning that budgets are getting scrutinised, people are being asked to deliver more with less. So again, it comes back to courage.
Do you agree with this, as you mentioned about economic markets and things? I read yesterday, I think, that it was near enough 50% of marketers that were that were surveyed in this survey. I can't reference anything. If anyone wants to challenge me on it, I can find it. It was in Marketing Week. 50% of marketers, again, don't know if that what levels they are, believe that we'll be in a recession in the next 6 to 12 months.
Interesting.
And the positioning of that was these. How I read the article was that these are budget holders. So,
what did it give any more detail about things like job displacement or?
No, it was well, not that I can remember. It was literally 50. I think it was around 50%. It was like budgets again, budgets related. Believe that we'll be in a recession in the next 6 to 12 months, which I don't know if I quite got it to that in my head, forecasted to that extreme. Like 50-50 is pretty straight down the middle, isn't it?
Yep. I mean, again, courage and bravery. It's always difficult, isn't it, to quantify investment and then also then question whether it's going in the right places when there's a tough economic climate. But with innovation comes opportunity, and I think the speed in which tech is evolving at the moment is gonna present opportunities that we can't even quantify.
No.
And I think abundance of opportunity in certain sectors will balance the books. There are going to be sectors that are going to struggle more than others.
Yeah. That's usually the case, isn't it?
But I think the abundance that we're going to see from the efficiencies and the capabilities of everyone having such powerful co-intelligence is, we can't even forecast that.
No. Should we do some this or that?
Yes.
I've got some in front of me, and one says, feel free to throw in this wild card, but I'm going to go for it first. The funnel and linear funnels, did they ever exist?
Did they ever exist?
So we're talking about linear funnel, so awareness all the way through to conversion, retention. They've always been talked about, haven't they? We'll have talked about them before, but we've also stopped talking about them and actually made the narrative about they no longer exist. You know, think about user-centered search, as we've kept talking about, user journeys being messy, chaotic, but in reality how people use the internet. Has the linear funnel ever existed in your opinion? We might have been made to think about them and try to shape approaches for them, but in true output perspective and results perspective, has it followed a? Could you say that, you know, you've spotted a linear funnel? Has it been commonplace?
I think that the funnel's purpose was to allow for a broad range of things to be discussed in a concise way by putting things in stages.
Yeah.
And I think those stages exist, but I think the activity that happens between them is so vast that it doesn't make sense, because it means that you miss so much detail. So it's not that they don't exist, it's just that the behaviour doesn't match the framework of a funnel anymore.
Yeah, it's not fit for purpose. Good, all right, I like that. I'm going to ask you this one. Attribution models, useful or fiction?
I mean, they're not. Track what you measure. Track what you can, or measure what you can.
Yeah.
And report on what you can. There are so many data points that you can measure, and there are tons and tons of ways to quantify value. But you need to understand that you can't always measure everything, but you can still see the value. And I think zooming out a little bit every now and then is always a good idea. I think performance marketing and the era of performance marketing has made people's minds shift to a in and out way of measurement, when in reality, taking a macro view sometimes shows the value a little bit more.
Not only a macro view, but a longer term view as well, to see that value.
Yep. Attribution is fucked at the moment, by the way. Just want to put that out there.
Yeah. Good luck. TikTok or Google for product discovery?
Probably TikTok for discovery.
Discovery. Yeah. I'd agree with that. Forums or FAQs?
Ooh. I don't know. Reddit. I mean, Reddit gets deep. I guess it depends what stage you're in. Research stage, probably forums. Purchase stage, probably you want to see some validated reviews, just to tip you over that final push to get you to purchase or to get you to inquire or whatever.
You know, it's a really interesting concept that I've just thought of. If you think about what you've just talked about there for like influence at sort of research stage, like Reddit, I've got a thing here like forums, Reddit, Trustpilot reviews. These are like faceless words that people are like trusting, if you think about it. Like we're talking about the power of, for example, a forum, Reddit. These people are faceless, aren't they? That you're reading and taking sort of, let's say, inspiration from and a lead from, which in so many ways Twitter and X has been absolutely shat on, rightly so, for poor quality content, things like that. And then you've got a Trustpilot reviews, Reddit, faceless forums as well, but obviously thriving sort of communities and forums. It's an interesting thing to think about, that there's a trust in sort of, let's say, faceless critical mass on a forum, and yet people talk about like word of mouth and recommendations, which is usually, I always imagine, in especially B2B, like face to face and people faces. We don't know these people from Adam.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. It got dragged through the mud, didn't it? Trustpilot, fake reviews, fake UGC. Reddit, I think, is its own beast. I think there's a lot of faceless comments and posts that go on Reddit, but I don't know. It depends how much you trust what's on the internet, which is probably not very much.
No, very true. I've asked you them all. I asked you Noel and Liam at the start, so Oasis or Blur?
Ooh, that's a really hard question. I need to ponder on that.
Despite the T-shirt I have on, which for anyone not watching is an Oasis T-shirt, I was never and have never been one over the other. Love them both.
It's a tough call, that. Yeah, it's an era thing, that, not a decider.
Love them both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Get in touch for Orbit.